It's been called the toughest job in the world, a job that's full of consequences. In fact, I was thinking about Newton's third law of every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And I think there's nothing truer than parenting for that. For me, as a mother of three children myself, I have understood that parenting is not a one formula fits all. For each of my children, I've had to be a different parent, just based on resonating with who they are as individuals. And that really brings me to our first question when we think about parenting. What is a top sort of fundamental of parenting?
Well, hello, nice to be here. One of the top fundamentals, and it's hard when you ask for just one, it would be our parental expectations, to examine them, to become aware of them, and to see how we project those expectations on our children.
That's great. Welcome to Imperfect Parenting with my special guest, New York Times best-selling author, clinical psychologist, and the creator of the Evolve Summit, where participants from all over the world come together for a weekend of transformation. Dr. Shefali Tsabary. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you on Round Glass. I've
Thank you
been
for
I've been spending so much time watching all your videos that I feel like I know you really well. And I, while listening to you on a conversation on Super Soul with Oprah, I think I got so much out of it that I kind of got a little bit depressed at my parenting skills. I was like, one second, which parts am I doing well, and which parts am I not doing well? And it's surprising, based on the fact that I feel I'm aware of parenting. But there were so many parts in that where you tugged at the truth, and I thought that was really interesting, especially as you spoke about check your own ego as it comes into play, and the other part where you spoke about make sure you're not creating a mini me because they
Mm.
are all individuals. I think those two really resonated with me, and I'd love to have your insight, a general overview of what conscious parenting really means.
Thank you. So, conscious parenting is something that I chanced upon when I realized how unconscious I was in my own parenting. And I realized that a lot of my feelings towards my child or expectations were not coming from the present moment, from what my child was emanating. It was really coming from baggage that I wasn't aware of, my childhood baggage, my own life experiences, my own belief systems that I was slapping on to my child's essence, which was then obscuring my capacity to recognize who is the child before me. I was dealing with the child of my fantasies, of my expectations, and I was missing the whole movie that was happening in front of me because I was in the movie that I had produced and scripted and cast roles to from my past. So that is the essence of conscious parenting, is when the parent wakes up, and it's depressing when we wake up to the epiphany that we are parenting from our own parenting that we received from our childhood. So conscious parenting is about raising your own unconscious self and raising your own inner child, so to speak, so that then once you are more healed and whole, that you can connect to the child in front of you.
Talking about the inner child, I know you're a therapist and you work with people who need to who generally uncover themselves through inner child work. In my therapy as a clinical hypnotherapist, I do the same. I work in into their history, and it's amazing that every trigger is sort of placed like a network in your childhood. And it really just gets pushed as you become adults. And I think that understanding really, if we have that understanding, the responsibility that we take, that we should take, that we should be open to accepting, is that every time that we are speaking, interacting, or being, as you call it, with our children, we need to be aware of the pros and cons of every action and every emotion that we're placing on our children. And you speak so beautifully to that. And I'd love to have sort of an idea come about where we're busting the myth of this perfect parenting to really being a recipient in the engagement of that communication together. So I'd really love your point of view on that.
Yeah, so we enter the parenting journey with these fantasies of how we will be, and they're based on our wounds. So the more wounds we have, the greater the fantasies, right? So when we've done the inner work, when we have fulfilled our own inner longings and met our own authentic self, we won't have these intense expectations and fantasies of anyone around us. Our vision board will be empty because the inner vision has been completed, has been fulfilled. You see, but because the inner vision is full of inner holes, HOLES, and they're not whole, WHOLE. The vision board is packed with Bentleys and islands and mountaintops and ocean views, because inside we are so cracked and barren and just longing. So it is in parenting. We enter this journey thinking it's going to be this amazing fulfillment of our inner longing. But our children have not come here as our psychic buddies to fulfill our inner needs. They're not our therapists, they're not our fathers, they're not our mothers. But we engage with them as if all the burden that the past relationships didn't heal, they are now responsible. So our children feel and absorb tremendous pressure to be perfect, to fulfill this idea that their parents have of them. You and I grew up in Asian cultures where we did feel pressure to fulfill some sort of standard. But really, the only standard that children need to fulfill is that of their own inner manifestation. But we don't give them that opportunity because it's all about us fulfilling perfection, because we feel so much shame around our inner wounds and imperfections. We were raised with shame and guilt. And because of that, we overcompensate to make our children the trophies and the glistening crowns that we can wear to kind of mitigate that sense of inner shame and guilt.
And that's actually so relevant today, because everybody, I mean, I see all my friends and their children are getting into university, and this competition is driving the parents mad. And I'm like, listen, what are you going to do once your children go? Because you've made your child your entire life, and there has to be a problem in that. You cannot make your journey in life your child. And I really want to talk about that, because that kind of overcompensation has got to bring about some kind of negativity in their life.
But we are overcompensating in our lives. So unless the parent sees how the overcompensation for the 10 cars and the fancy zip code and the jewelry in the vault and the desire for 20 shoes or 20,000 shoes, I don't know, is all coming from this inner void. It's coming from emptiness. And we project onto the external world our desire to be perfect. So until we parents realize that the overcompensation is in our own lives, we won't see it bleeding onto our children, pushing them to do, 3 foreign languages and taking them for ski trips to the Alps if we can afford it, or wanting to take them. The other day I was with a parent in Manhattan, which is overcompensation on steroids, and she was telling me how excited she was because this private school, which she spent $1 bazillion on for pre-kindergarten, was taking their pre-kindergartner to the MoMA to be exposed to art. And I was like, what happened to the coloring book, in the trash
Yeah.
can? That's good
Yeah.
enough for a kid. So we set these expectations that are absolutely delusional, thinking that that's what's going to make a strong, grounded, and resilient kid. And actually, it teaches the child to depend on this external validation, which is the antithesis of raising inner resilience. So we're kind of all messed up and topsy turvy, but the good news is that it's universal. Like, we're all messed up. So no one needs to feel bad about it. We're all messed up and screwing our kids up. I have a huge fund, a kitty for my kids' therapy. So there's no question I've already messed her up. And there's nothing much you can do about it except have humor, laugh about it, understand why, because we're in a culture of great delusional ego. And we are all, to some degree, slaves of it. And we have to have humor about it, but we also have to have the desire to want to awaken. To awaken is not for the meek or the fragile. It's a really brave-hearted process and takes tremendous courage.
Right. I think in one of your talks, I heard you speak to a father, or a quote that you spoke to a father who said, "My child is not, excelling in anything or in one thing. He's not an expert in anything." And I think you turned around and asked him, "And what are you an expert in?" And I thought that was so cool, because I mean, we have so much desire for our children, and we want to measure them and make them superstars in something, and that kills them. I mean, I've seen children who are, I do a lot of work in mental health and mental health awareness, um, and especially with the youth, and I've seen it really be catastrophic in how it how it nurtures them as, as the youth of today. And I thought that was really stellar when you brought that awareness, and I really wish that we could bring more of that kind of awareness, because I see a the pandemic of parenting almost, where we're constantly um, sort of, we have these standards that we want to measure our children on, and not only with other people's children, but with our own children, if we have more than one as well.
Absolutely. Because we are projecting a lot onto people who are experts or teachers or celebrities, we project that, oh, those people have it all together. Those people are happy. Rich people must be happy. Famous people must be happy, and they got their life together. And if I could be rich and famous and successful, I'll be happy. So that's why we make our children into these caricatures of fame or wealth, because we come from a good place. It's a foolish place, but it's a well-intentioned place that'll make them happy, right? So Jim Carrey says, I wish for every person to become rich and famous, because then they'll see that it does not happy make, right? So
Yeah.
it's when the parent has realized what is the source of happiness for their own life. And the source of happiness is really presence. It's how to be in this present moment, how to be in abundance right here, right now, how to be connected to your inner voice, how to be manifesting your authentic knowing. Those things have nothing to do with cars, shoes, or jewelry. So when the parent hasn't evolved to that place, it's quite natural that they will project this onto their children. I just want my kid to be happy. I just want my kid to be successful. That's natural. It comes from foolish ignorance, but it's coming from a well meaning place.
And I really want to touch upon this, that you're talking about being presence on the spectrum to being a helicopter parent. How do you
Mm.
know where you're landing, and how do you put a stop to that? Because helicopter parenting or over involvement also has detrimental effects. So I really want our audience to understand what is really being present versus what is helicopter parenting, and really controlling the consequences
Right.
and actions and discovery that your child is having.
Yeah, great question. So, when we are anxious inside, which most of us are and are not even aware of, we convert the anxiety into some sort of control. Either we get angry, or we get obsessive, or we get overprotective. So, the helicopter parent is not really a caring parent. She or he acts all caring, but she's just desperately, or he's desperately anxious. The angry parent who goes, I'm just saying this because I love you, is full of shit. It's not true. It's because they are desperate for control, because they're feeling out of control. So there's a whole chapter in one of my books called the myth of caring, and it's how we pretend that control is caring. So helicopter parenting and all those kinds of obsessive parenting is not loving parenting. It's actually very self-absorbed parenting, where you use your children as a dumping ground of your anxiety. And again, only when a parent practices returning to their own inner self and has a meditation practice, has a grounding practice, has a self-aware practice where they go for therapy or coaching, they are on the path of self-awareness and growth. Only then that parent will be able to be aware in the moment where they are stepping over their lane into their children's autonomy because they are anxious, because they are nervous, and they are using their child as this place to projectile all their anxiety on. So it's very tragic that parents are cut off from their awareness because our children suffer. And if you have the good child, you know, the prototypical good child or the eager to please child, that child's spirit is decimated, forget it. And if you have the rebellious child or the child who dares to have some intelligence and see through their parents' hypocrisy, that child is doomed as the bad child, right? So we parents are constantly going good child, bad child, you know, and of course the good child is the one who strokes our ego, and the bad child is the one who asks too many questions, right? We didn't have children for this. Why, no, no, right? The other day some parent came to me and said, you know, my child talks back to me all the time. How do you deal with that? So I said, cut that tongue off. Why didn't you cut that tongue off? Right? That should be part of the circumcision package. You want tongue also, right? Because we parents are talking such rubbish. Like, your child is talking back because they have a brain, because they have sense, and they have a mouth that they should use, right? So we're such hypocrites, right? When I taught my daughter the word hypocrite, oh, every day, mom, you're such a hypocrite. Because I am. Because I wanted to be a leader and brave and talk back against authority, but not in the house. So, you know, we parents, we need to really wake up because it's a tragedy that happens. But again, I have compassion for parents because parents were parented really terribly. And so I understand why we would repeat these cycles, right? It's all just a pattern being repeated. And we have opportunities to wake up, but we don't take those opportunities. But eventually, the good thing about the ego is that it'll get us into so much trouble that one day we will have to wake up. Hopefully, it's not in our 90s, you know?
That would be a tragedy. But better late than never. So I have some quick yes and no's. I mean, this is really quick, sort of like a rapid fire round, just for us to get through a few things. So putting your child before yourself, yes or no?
Yes.
Give the child what they want all the time.
No.
Meet your child's every need post the age of 3.
No. You
Show your
can't.
vulnerability.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah, all
Ce-
these are these are big traps, okay? But okay, I'm going to follow the rules. Okay.
Celebrate your imperfections.
Yes.
Find time to do nothing with them.
Yes.
Celebrate their imperfections.
Yes.
Respect their opinions.
Respect their opinions?
Opinion.
Yes. Yes, 100%.
Fe- Feel guilty when you say no to your child.
No.
Manage your teen's routine.
Your teen's routine?
Daily life routine.
No.
Do homework with your child.
Maybe. Yes. I don't know. Do it for your
Clean up.
child. Just get it over with.
Clean up after your child.
I'm sorry?
Clean up after your child.
No. I always clean up. I'm thinking, what would a good parent say?
Give early responsibility to your child.
Sure, yes.
Your child must be happy at all times, or you're failing as a parent.
No.
Thank you. I really enjoyed those. There's a live question that we have from our audience. Um, from Is it good or okay to be a friend with your child?
Yes, it's very good to be your child's friend and ally and guide. And, there's such a misbelief in parenting that you're not supposed to be their friend, you're their parent. Yeah, but you can be friendly, you can be lovely, we have such BS ideas about being friends, you know. But I tell my daughter all the time because she thinks I'm so much of her friend when she, curses in front of me, talks such gutter language. I tell her, I'm not your friend. She's like, yes, you are. I'm like, okay. But, because I've been so confused myself because culture is like, you should not be a friend. But it's such BS. We should be friends. Life is too short. And of course, when it comes to saying no for the really risky things, we have to step into our empowerment, but that's common sense. But the parent's ego says we shouldn't be our child's friend. But again, the other caveat that must be talked about is that you need to be their friend, but they're not necessarily your friend. Like you go find your own friends, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really important one because a lot of parents overshare with their children, and that
Hmm.
leads to problems in therapy. I mean, we've seen it all the time. I think that's
Yes,
a really
yes.
important one.
You
And
can't use your children.
yeah, and the other thing I heard the other day, because I was speaking to somebody about something, and she was talking about how her most traumatic times were when her parents thought she was asleep and they kept talking to each other negatively, and she was absorbing all that. So we have to be so
Mm-hmm.
aware of
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
of what we say around them, even if
Mm.
we have a open relationship with our children.
Yes, yes.
Um, Actually, that brings me to the next point as well. With sort of, there's been obviously a rise in divorce rates, especially during this pandemic as well. It seems like uh, people recognized where they were in the relationship and decided to take action. Um, but the children dealt with a kind of a loss of a family member or a family
Hmm.
situation. How do we talk to our children about divorce or separation? How do we ease them into the changes?
Yeah, it depends on their age and what you said. We have to ease them, and it may take years. And, I often counsel couples who are going through a separation to sometimes, just move to the next room, move downstairs, move upstairs, move next door. Uh, you know, for your children, especially if they're under 13, this unit is their primary internal representation of the world. So if you break up this unit too fast or with too much trauma, you are telling them that the world is an unsafe place. Now, if they're 16, 17, and then of course after 21, it's a whole different story. But for young children, you want to really go slow. You want to, of course, keep it out of the courts. You want to keep it out of contention and fighting. So you try.
Not that easy
No.
for most people, right? We have another live question. Uh, how vulnerable should we be with our kids?
I think we should be human and we can show our imperfections. I get a little nervous about giving permission to parents to be vulnerable because then they'll use their kids as their therapist, right? You don't want your kids, especially under 13, to see you falling apart and having to be an alcoholic every night, right? That you're like, ah, that's me, right? People think that, oh, be authentic. No, that's your traumatized self, and you need to go heal. Your children don't need to see you falling apart. You are their hero for their young years. So they need, like I said, you are their internal representation of an external world. So if you are not stable, if you are not together to some degree, you are their indicator or their symbol of whether this world is a safe, predictable, reliable place. Already it's a chaotic place, so are you the anchor? So being vulnerable is lovely in really small doses, and being authentic is more important, and being real is more important. But what's more important than all of this is to go heal your damn self so that you're not like a broken mess in vomiting all over the floor. So that's the most important. How about instead of saying, can I, because I get so many calls, can I share this, can I be real, can I be, and it's all about their pain, right? I go, yeah, you have a lot of pain, sure, you may want to share it, sure, you can be in your mood, but how about instead of sharing with your kids, first think to yourself, can I go and heal myself? Because that's what your kids want. Your kids don't care really about your authenticity. They don't really care about your problems. They just want to know, can you see me? Can you be there for me?
Yeah.
And can you stop dumping your junk on me? Right? The
Yeah.
kids just want you as an anchor from which they fly.
Yeah.
And that's the greatest gift we can give our children, is not even a best friend, not even the huggy kissy relationship. What's the most important is a safe, secure, freeing, liberating place from which they can launch into the world.
This reminds me of a statement my son often makes when somebody is complaining about something. He says, "That sounds like a you problem," and he cuts off anybody else's like empathy or vulnerability or emotions. That's like a you problem, and that's it. Like it's like keep it away from my little
Yeah.
radius here, right? And I think that that's important. I think kids are now learning how to set up, at least what I've seen. They know how to set their boundaries, or maybe I allow them to have their own boundaries. So I see it a lot, right? They have their boundaries, and I often don't step into their boundary if it's a safe boundary. But it's during I was just thinking about it during the holiday time. It's difficult to kind of get children off of technology and to get them to be more engaged in family time, especially if you're a working parent. I'd love to get some tips from you about what are the best practices during a vacation. And I'm not a vacation where you're going out, maybe a staycation where you're at home.
Yeah, it's really hard with the screens that are far more attractive than us now. So it's difficult, but if you have kids under 10, you have some ability to influence where their energy is spent. Every year after age of 10, your influence is going down, down, down. It's really dwindling. My daughter's 20. I get like 3 minutes of a text, maybe, of influence. That's it, a day. So you have to know that, but that's why the ages 0 to 10 are so important, because put in the effort then, may create that foundation then, so that later you feel more trust and you can release them. But yeah, the screens are a constant fight, and that's why you have to know, I call it crack cocaine. You're giving your kid crack cocaine, so be careful. What age? Parents are like, what age should I introduce crack cocaine? So I'm like, oh, okay, let's see, 7. So if you look at it as that, as really dangerous, you're giving them like something that is going to abduct their mind. This is a kidnapping situation, a hostage situation. I use
Yeah.
these severe words because this is not, when you and I got the iPhone, you're younger than me, but I was the first generation of idiots who was so excited to get this iPhone, right? But we didn't know what it would do to our children. And I don't want to blame the iPhone, but all this technology would do to our children. And it is abducting our children's childhoods. And there's no nice way to say about it. So I tell parents, no screens till teens, go back to the good old TV. Tell them to take the TV in the car. That was the TV. The TV is such a beautiful thing now, in my opinion, because our children can't carry it in their pocket. So we have a great challenge to conscious parenting now. We have a great challenge, and that is the lack of connection and the lack of presence brought about by the monster called technology. So,
So true. And I think this brings me to your beautiful work where you're getting people to transform by getting them to kind of, sort of dig deep within themselves. And And I think that all parents should also come in there, because you're saying to us in this course of conversation that um, if you have your first responsibility is to fix yourself so that you don't project that onto your children. And I think your summit is a super place to kind of do that, and it's coming up in October, and I'd love for you to share more about that.
Thank you. So, one of the greatest ways and most effective, powerful ways to change your life is to remove yourself from your current situation, your home, your family, and be a seeker and place yourself with like hearted, like minded people. This is why I created the summit in 2015, because I wanted to be surrounded by like hearted, like minded people. So I created Evolve, and it's in October, it's in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a hub for all the airlines. So I have people coming from all over the world. It's 3 days with an additional add on of a meditation day. I'm on stage for the most part, helping people heal and disrupt patterns, break out of the matrix, and truly transform their lives. So if anyone listening is seeking and yearning a different way of thinking and looking at their lives, well, you can't just sit passively at home and hope your child will change and hope your partner will change. You got to buy a ticket, get on a plane, make an investment in yourself. And that's what Evolve is about. So people can go to my website, drshefali.com, and explore it for themselves. I have great speakers coming, and it's going to be a real life enhancing weekend.
Oh, that just sounds amazing. I love that idea. I haven't been to it, but I would love to actually come myself and
You should.
experience this. Before we go, I just want to get the most important things for parents to do and to remember.
Well, whenever they're triggered in a conflict, they must use that information to reflect back on their own projections, on their ego, on their expectations. Instead of fixing the child, asking themselves, what about me right now is acting out and having a tantrum? What about my inner pain is activated? And using those trigger moments with our children as a portal to discover more about the self.
That's super. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank everybody at home for joining us as well. For additional information on parenting and well-being, please take a look on roundglass.com. We are Holistic Wellbeing. I'm Prakriti Poddar, and I am Holistic Wellbeing.